Good afternoon, everyone. Are you able to see me? Because right now on my preview in YouTube Studio, I look like just a dark box, which is not supposed to be what's happening. Ah, there we go. Today, I'm going to be reacting to one of what I think is the best cryptocurrency videos on YouTube, which was done by Mooncat called Web3, a Libertarian Dystopia. I was lucky enough to actually get to interview her too on my podcast, Crypto Critics Corner, a while ago. So after this reaction, I would love if you guys went and listened to that too. I'm reacting to this. It's not a new video, but I just think it's really well done. And I think she did a really good job of getting at a lot of the big picture things that are often missed when people discuss cryptocurrency. And so I want to kind of go over those and add a little bit of additional color I have from my time covering cryptocurrencies. And so without further ado, let's get this started.
2063. The global currency is Moosecoin. You're refused entry into the metaverse's Lambo Club because your Twitter profile picture is not enclosed in an icosahedron. In a desperate bid to hold onto a square of pixels or land you bought in Elontopia, you must pay rent to Paris Hilton, who bought $17 billion worth of real estate with a picture of a monkey in 2033, and in a bid to become immortal has since replaced all of her organs with bionic hardware, each limb operated by its own smart contract. Citizens who own sliving tokens now have voting rights on her every move, from cooking mediocre lasagnas to overthrowing what is left of democracy. Jobs are obsolete, and by the time you get to the Meta Walmart, Moosecoin has crashed.
Hey, excuse me guys. Check my book.
Never take the bubbles off.
But it's okay, because you're in control of who has your data now, and your dirty fiat currency didn't devalue by 2% over the entire year. That might be what happens if Web3 actually takes off, but it seems that for some reason people actually want to stop this from happening. Well,
Yeah, fuck those people.
welcome back to the Mooncat channel. Are you ready for another rabbit hole that would confuse the shit out of a small Victorian child? Oh, and if you're a crypto bro watching this video, yes, I'm about to FUD. I am gonna FUD so hard! To understand the intention behind Web3, you need to understand Web 1 and Web 2. Those of you who don't have back problems might not remember Web 1, so let Grandma Moon explain. It involved Neopets, Netscape browsers, dedicating half of your desk space to your CRT monitor, watching Napster take 3 hours to download the latest newfound glory pop punk hit in 96 kilobits per second, only to open it and find out that it's
Two girls, one cup.
physical fights with your siblings over who gets to use the landline, hamsterdance.com, chain emails that threatened you with a 7-year curse, janky browsers on your Sony Ericsson flip phone.
I remember once when I was younger and I'd first gotten like a feature phone which actually had a web browser on it, and just as the kind of person who loves reading whenever I can, I ran up quite a hefty bill and got a bit of a talking to from my parents after that the first month with that web browser on my feature phone.
Got mail.
It's a hyperlink to
Dirty.
signing in and out of MSN Messenger to try and get the attention of Brandon, Windows XP, writing surreal erotic fanfiction on the Good Charlotte forum with your emo punk friend.
You can hear the modem scream.
Yahoo! Malware, GeoCities.
Meat spin.
But then Web 2 came along. Now we have Google, Facebook, JavaScript, Google, Amazon, cookies, Google, Facebook, data harvesting, Facebook, Amazon, Google. Who put Bing there? Google, Facebook. But many people think that there's something new on the horizon, something to break us free from these large corporations and eliminate the middleman, and that's
The blockchain.
Now, how am I going to explain blockchain technology without making you all want to stab yourselves in the eyeballs?
This isn't a question I've figured out.
I'm gonna have to Margot Robbie it, aren't I? Oh! Whoa! I don't have a butler, okay? Or a champagne flute, for that matter. Blockchain technology is a bit like... Imagine there was a really easy, quick way of making payments called, I don't know, Visa, right? But you thought, hey, why don't we replace this system with something else that doesn't involve a middleman, right? Because that's a problem that needs solving, and replace it with a system that uses more power than the Netherlands. Or say you want to pay 1 queef coin to Tracy, but instead of your phone sending one message to your bank, and then your bank checks the funds and then sends the funds to Tracy, your phone sends a message to a few 100,000 people, idling extremely powerful computers 24/7, playing a sort of extreme bingo. And then once one of the computers wins, the block of payments gets added to...
The extreme bingo is really way closer than it seems. Like when you first hear about Bitcoin and you hear about computers doing all these computations, you think there must be some value in those computations, some reason they're doing them. But really all they're doing is trying to get their hash function to spit out one that has the right number of zeros at the beginning that they're allowed to actually be the next one to mine the block. The entire thing is intentionally pointless, and like the calculations themselves are just measured by who can get that correct number of zeros at the beginning of their thing first, which makes it feel really ridiculous when you start to understand it.
...a ledger, and this creates a blockchain. And the winner of this stupid computer bingo gets a little reward of a fraction of a queef coin. And then 10 minutes and 400 kilograms of CO2 later, if you're lucky, and Tracy hasn't lost her passphrase, the silly bitch, she receives her queef coin. But now it's 10 minutes later, and 1 queef coin is worth about 1/10 of what it was when you sent it. Or think of it like this. Instead of asking a trusted friend to oversee your queef coin transaction, you say, I would like to send you this queef coin, but in order to do so, I cannot put my trust into this friend. So instead, I will put my trust in thousands of strangers on a decentralized network that are actually mostly controlled by random millionaire tech nerds that own loads of shipping containers full of NVIDIA graphics cards. And
It's not graphics cards anymore. It's been ASICs for Bitcoin for a while, but it was back when Georgie made this video, graphics cards for Ethereum. They've since moved to proof of stake and are no longer consuming the same extraordinary amount of energy they were before, which is why the price of graphics cards has gone down. So if you're a gamer, you've lucked out from the fact that Ethereum was only 7 years behind schedule instead of more.
Fucking Siberia or something, and why don't we burn down a forest at the same time just for fun? Yeah, it doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense. And that's because it fucking doesn't! So this technology has been around since the 2008 market crash, touted as a solution to the problem of the banking system, but hasn't really caught on much outside of purchasing black market goods, money laundering and tax evasion. So this left a few whales holding a large portion of the available computer coins, but in order to cash out without making a huge loss, they'd need to find other people who were willing to pay more for their fake computer coins than they paid for it originally. But where were they going to find these silly little suckers to provide this much needed liquidity? Cryptocurrency needed a marketing strategy to make it a bit less black tar heroin and a little bit more Disney. Enter NFTs. Why don't you bunch this, you pussy ass hexagon bitch? When's the last time you made a girl twitch? The art market loves rich people for obvious reasons, and rich people love art for
Mostly the reason rich people love art is for tax evasion and money laundering purposes.
obvious reasons.
Tax evasion.
For many decades, the art world and the billionaire world have enjoyed a beautiful symbiotic relationship wherein an artist has a work valued by a museum or a collector for millions and millions of dollars, and some billionaire will buy the work, the artist gets some cash, and because the billionaire liked the art so much, they get to keep it offshore, locked away in a free port, because they can't even bear to look at it or pay any taxes on it. It's just so beautiful and profound. It's impossible to pay any tax on it. But interestingly, this is all about to change. Auction houses have enjoyed decades of not having to give a single fuck about facilitating money laundering, because when a Tony Soprano character comes in, you know, nobody have to tell no one where that money came from and nobody get whacked, you know. It's like a unwritten agreement, you know, a wink and a nudge, a suitcase full of cash, 5 mil for an Andy Warhol. Don't worry about it, it's no one's business, capiche? Bada bing, bada boom, everybody wins.
Yeah, that is basically how the art world works as I understand it.
I don't know what the accent was, but oh no, in December of 2020, US Congress passed a new legislation that went into effect at the end of 2021, and the EU passed legislation at the start of 2020, making it much more difficult to hide where your dirty suitcase of fiat money came from. And in perfect synergy, like star-crossed lovers, the art market and Silicon Valley tech nerd billionaires with their fake computer money in need of a crypto marketing strategy found each other. And just like an MLM, you need to give your scam a product in order to give it a sort of facade of legitimacy and real value, and not simply a mechanism to funnel
Just right here, since Georgie's talking about MLMs, you should, after this, of course, because I want your viewership time now, go and watch her videos on MLMs. She does a brilliant job of breaking them down, showing how they get people into the funnel, how they exploit them, the fake promises, and you see so many parallels between those MLM structures and crypto. And so, like, that's why I was so excited when we got the opportunity to interview her, because that insight gives you a lot more info into how crypto really works than being able to rattle off the stuff about zeros at the beginning of the block like I did when I was talking about mining, because it is kind of that structure that's really where a lot of the harm is done, not in the details.
even more money to the top 1%. And it's pretty fucking simple, really. Say you're one of these whales holding some illiquid ether, and you have large investments in various crypto projects, and you'd really like them to take off, and it would also be lovely if you could get more people to buy ether at the same time, allowing your company to stonk and your personal stonks to stonk. So say you approach a famous digital artist, maybe that digital artist is called Beeple, and you say,
"Hey, did you know the Ethereum blockchain and decentralized economies are the future? I have a DAO on the Ethereum blockchain. Why don't you stitch a load of your pictures together, mint it as a non-fungible token on OpenSea, and I'll buy it with some ether. Then the news outlets will shit their pants, man, and everyone will realize how awesome NFTs are and that this is definitely the future of digital ownership."
what the fuck are you talking about? Dude, I have billions stuck in the computer, okay? I can't get it out. I need the money that's stuck in the computer.
This is why I appreciate the videos so much. Like, taking all the nerdy financial talk about liquidity and everything away and getting to the point that, like, there's a few rich people who aren't as rich as they actually look, and they're trying to convince people to buy in so that they can end up mostly as rich as they look. Like, that drives a ton of the activity in cryptocurrency, and it's so easy to miss when you start doing what I often do and getting down into the minutiae of some of these scams and stuff, because, like, the broader picture of this industry is one that is very often just this. It's people looking for new suckers, new exit liquidity, new ways to turn their fake wealth into real wealth.
I still don't understand. You get $69 million. In hard cash? Yes. USD? Yes. Okay. It worked. In March 2021, in the NFT mania that followed, Ether's value skyrocketed along with this businessman's company, effectively allowing him to immediately make all of his JPEG money back, an estimated 5 times over, and on top, got free marketing for his magic computer money wallet company, which is now acting as a sort of mortgage bond provider, but for NFTs, which will definitely end well.
There's a bubble.
And the craze had only just begun. Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks were among.
I don't know if any of you have seen it yet, but Bored Ape Yacht Club announced their first game called Dookie Dash, where if you have an ape or a mutant ape, you're going to be able to claim a sewer pass and then compete in Dookie Dash. And in this, you're going to travel into the sewers underneath the yacht club to dig through shit in the hope of finding a key. And if you're the one who finds the key, you get the special rewards. You're eligible for extra rewards if you happen to have a bored kennel dog bullshit thing. And yes, the Bored Ape Yacht Club is literally one of my least favorite groups in all of cryptocurrency.
The first NFT collections to capitalize on the hype right after the Beeple sale. And in my opinion, the only reason that they did so well was simply due to being in the right place at the right time. And something tells me that the project has since been, I don't know, rushed somewhat.
No humans detected.
One of these characters was sold for nearly $15,000. For that much, I'd want the
Way more now.
ape to climb out of the screen like the girl in the ring.
My cholesterol is gonna go up after that.
But this is meant to be the utility of the project. This is what it's all for, right? This is the value. Yet there's barely any interest in it apart from people hate watching it. They have a lo-fi live stream as well, which regularly clocks all of around.
Hey, y'all, we've got 9 times the amount of the Bored Ape Yacht Club Lo-Fi Hip Hop radio channel right now. Y'all are seeing that.
5 viewers, but yeah, utility, guys. Speculative early adopters of the Bored Ape Yacht Club and CryptoPunks NFTs got lucky, and we've had to put up with a torrent of cringe ever since.
What?
NFT collections, which were already doing well, were further pumped by other grifters who wanted to artificially pump the prices of other projects in order to increase the legitimacy of their own. And that brings us to one villain of the Mooncat cinematic universe.
Her video on Gary Vee, incredible. I'm going to keep saying that. All of her videos are great, but the Gary Vee one I've watched like 3 times because it is such a well done look at him and his fans.
Gary Vee. And we know exactly how he did this thanks to this Crypto Bro circle jerk conversation between Mr. Beast, seasoned pumper and dumper Logan Paul,
Suck my dink, bro.
Dink?
and Logan Paul's side bro.
Dink doink with the hottest functionality and all of the most built-in techniques, tactics.
Gary Vee, it's like fucking 11 p.m. Just out of nowhere, just calls me and he's like, yo, I got like 30 people to call, hop in. I'm like, so me and Logan both bought punks. You guys have probably seen on his Twitter that he bought a bunch of crypto punks at the same time. He's like, it'll be the best decision of your life. Just get in. I was
Yeah,
like, okay.
yeah.
And so I just joined the call.
Every heavy hitter you can imagine who's
Exactly.
worth $1 billion was on this one call.
Here's what you're gonna do, and you're gonna do it right now. You're all gonna buy a bunch of crypto punks. We're all just like, are you sure, Gary? And we're asking questions, and he's like, just buy it. I was just so pulled by his like conviction
Yeah.
that I bought a bunch.
Wait.
Yeah, I bought quite a few.
What's your rarest characteristic punk?
Well, I've already sold quite a few of them, so I don't.
I joined the cult, but actually, you know, I've sold all of them. I don't actually know anything about the ones I owned. I'm assuming they had traits, but I don't know what they are or why I would care about that. Really, I'm just glad I bought in as soon as I got the tip and sold them once they went up in price. That was the whole reason I was doing it.
I don't
What?
He was preaching about blockchain JPEGs to Logan Paul and Mr. Beast at 11 p.m. No wonder his wife left him. Gary Vee's plan successfully persuaded multiple millionaires to buy Ether and then buy CryptoPunks with that Ether, because apparently CryptoPunks are the new Facebook, guys, because Gary Vee's entire career is basically built around reminding people about that one time he was right, and then using that to make it look like he always knows what the next big thing is. He then convinced these millionaires to immediately flip the NFTs and buy his own blockchain scribbles instead with the proceeds.
So then I rolled the money into VFriends because Gary, same thing, called me. He's like, VFriends.
Now, one thing we know about Gary Vee is that his poor fans aren't worth a lot to him because he can't charge them 10 grand for a meeting and then use that meeting for the purposes of extracting further money out of them.
There's no utility in poor fans, okay? Apart from when you're shouting fake motivational buzzwords at them and uploading that to social media, okay?
So how does he solve the problem of the vast majority of his fans being broke as shit? Through various complex NFT schemes, of course. And because no one is familiar with the grift yet, the space is rife for exploitation. First of all, he gets his millionaire friends to pay over the odds for his scribbles, artificially inflating the price, something we know in the real world as painting the tape.
Hey, we've seen some DOJ indictments come down for NFT rug pulls and now for cryptocurrency insider trading. So NFT market manipulation is not something I would be confident I would get away with. Maybe these people know something I don't.
Which is an illegal
They don't know something I don't. At least not about this.
activity. He's not the only one recreating actions that would be considered fraud in the real world, as over 80% of trades on the Looks Rare platform were found to be wash trading, which is the practice of selling assets to yourself to artificially inflate the price.
So, technically speaking, painting the tape is a type of wash trading where you're also eating up other people's like sales and stuff to get the price up. A wash sale itself is just a trade to yourself, which can be done at a single price just to try to artificially inflate the volume rather than the price. So painting the tape is like a subset of wash trading, and wash trading is the broader category, which can include like trading at a flat price or trying to artificially increase the price.
Then, once his impressionable fans see that his scribbles are selling for astronomical prices, they get all sad because they can't afford them and they're FOMOing hard. So what does Gary do to make it look like he's super generous and inclusive? Well, he releases a new book and then tells them all to buy 12 physical copies. They had to be the physical copies.
This is still one of the most wild things to me I've seen, is like to make sure your book charts tell your fans to buy 12 of them and they might get a token. Like, just fucking blatant.
And then you get one free Book Friends collection NFT, which he doesn't bother pumping with his millionaire friends because what's the point? They've already bought the fucking books. Meanwhile, Gary's new book becomes a bestseller before release. Gary's fans list the spare books on eBay, hoping to sell them at half price. And some even start burning them in furnaces to keep warm because they can't afford heating anymore. So holders of the VFriends NFTs, not the book NFTs, that's in a separate collection, this one isn't for the pause, get to attend VCon 2 whole times.
They get to attend VCon. Man, if I'm at VCon, it's because I have to be.
VCon is a special event in which you sit in a conference hall, repeatedly picturing your closest family members being shot directly in the fucking face, and realizing that that would actually be a more pleasurable.
That's a reference to Gary Vee saying that that's how he motivates himself each day. He imagines his family being shot in the face.
Experience than being subjected to people like Charlie and Dixie D'Amelio, FaZe Banks and Logan Paul for an entire fucking weekend. So he's essentially holding an auction for them to see himself live and separate auctions to actually meet him and do things like go bowling with him. But imagine someone like Britney Spears, instead of selling tickets at a fixed price on a first come first served basis, she auctioned seats for her concerts. So who would end up going to Britney Spears concerts? It would be her richest fans. And this is generally seen in the music industry as unethical. Artists don't want to be seen as prioritizing rich fans over poor fans. Gary Vee, on the other hand.
So, like, this is actually a really big reason why you see so much scalping and bots on ticket prices, is because artists have this issue where they can't actually list their tickets for what they're worth, because if they are, their fans as a group will create a bunch of negative PR around that, talking about how they're effectively trying to take advantage of their fans by selling it for this much. And so instead they have to list it at this one lower price that the fans will find justified. But then because there's such a large incentive in the actual price, like the clearing price, is higher. You see all the bots buy up and sell it at them there. And that's why like there was this huge controversy a few years back because Bieber's team basically tried to participate in that by holding back some tickets and then selling them in the secondary marketplace where the bots are selling them after the initial like public price had gone out in order to try to avoid the controversy of taking too much from the fans. But really the issue is people are willing to pay far more for these tickets, but the artists aren't allowed to charge that. And this is why you'll see people like Mark Cuban did in his interview with us on Crypto Critics Corner talking about NFTs as a way around this, because you can build them in with like a certain royalty. You lock them into your own marketplace. You run them on a chain that's mostly under your control, so it's not meaningfully decentralized. And then you can collect a royalty in all those post-secondary sales. So you can now offer them at this super cheap price that your fans will be okay with and still benefit from all the reoccurring bot sales as it goes down the line. And like that's an important part of a lot of like the NFT ticketing schemes that are coming out.
Hand has found a way around appearing unethical to guarantee that only his wealthiest fans are closest to him at all times. Gary then pursued another NFT project in which only holders of his most prestigious scribbles are guaranteed access to a 5-star seafood restaurant. Oh, but don't worry, broke Gary V fans. You get to hang out with Gary now as well, as long as you rent an NFT from his wealthier fans and allowing Gary to extract more value from said wealthier VIP fans as a result. Gosh, this is sounding an awful lot like a sort of scheme structured like a sort of inverted funnel, doesn't it? Oh, and don't worry, Gary has ensured that he receives 10% of the proceeds of all VFriends NFT resales, so he doesn't miss out on any of the sweet revenue garnered from his wealthiest fans bidding to the death to smell his Sigma sushi farts. Meanwhile, as the NFT market's griftathon was in full cringe, it only made the Bored Apes project look more legit in comparison, and it continued to increase in value, which eventually culminated in the pinnacle of cringe.
So a lot of those celebrities who took on Bored Apes, that was orchestrated by a company called MoonPay, who was working with, it looked like CCA, because that's who was representing all the people who were getting them to work out basically deals where they were basically sponsored posts. They were getting these apes not at their normal cost, and it was all part of like this elaborate, weird marketing scheme. If you search like MoonPay Bored Ape celebrities, I bet you can find some coverage on it. I don't have any I can think of off the top of my head to link to.
Earlier this year, where celebrity millionaires got horny on Maine for painting the tape and literally painted all types of tape on Twitter and even on fucking late night TV. Never mind the unfathomable cringe of this clip. This is at best undisclosed advertising and at worst a fucking crime.
This is your ape. Are we debuting it?
It's really cool. Like the hat, the shades.
And what? How did you pick?
And it probably won't surprise you to learn that all of these celebrities have financial interests or are affiliated with the same talent agency, which has an investment in OpenSea. So you know how people play video games for fun? Well, NFT enthusiasts want that to end. Another NFT shill scheme is the gamification of the links to
Dookie Dash.
The JPEG receipts. Axie Infinity has become the most popular play-to-earn game, in which you buy an NFT of an Axie and you can fight it sort of Pokemon style. And stories about players in the Philippines being able to Axie their way out of poverty are so heartwarming and are probably written in some way or sponsored by people invested in crypto, because all ethics in journalism seem to go by the wayside as soon as a fucking blockchain is involved.
We got several episodes about ethics of journalism in crypto on the Crypto Critics Corner podcast. So after this, you guys should go check out some of those episodes. Most recent would be Journalism with Nicholas Day.
The idea of playing a fun.
It is not still going super well, Squiggly Bits. It is going quite badly. People who invested in Axie have been badly hurt, first by the hack of their bridge, the collapse of their token, and the change in their tokenomics.
Cute game to earn a living. It's something that I think resonates with a generation.
There There's this company I've spent a lot of time covering called Tether. It's a stablecoin in the cryptocurrency space. One of its founders was Brock Pierce. Some of you may recognize Brock Pierce from documentaries like An Open Secret. That's all I'm going to say on that. Or from other things like his digital asset business, where in World of Warcraft and similar games, he found ways to take gold, coins, items, other things like that, and sell them. And the way he described it at the time was incredibly problematic, frustrating. He talked about developing a human supply chain in China for digital assets and things like that, and would often use this same kind of language around these people can make a living playing a game, and they are then like grinding to mine this gold and stuff, which he was selling into the marketplace and stuff like that, and it's just a fucking bad idea.
That's looking for new ways of making money online, new ways of finding a digitally native income. With the pandemic, it's destroyed a lot of physical jobs, in many cases kind of permanently. So I really think that what we're dealing with is a fundamental change in the nature of work.
Crypto-based games are community owned. Everybody in the community gets to share in the revenues and the upsides, which means that participants, people who play, get a chance to play to earn. And that's just incredible to me, and it creates really unique opportunities. Now, anybody around the world can play and make money playing, and it makes perfect sense once you dig into the numbers.
It does not make perfect sense once you dig into the numbers. The numbers do not make sense. See the crash, the people making basically nothing now. And just a ton of people sustainably making money in a game requires you to develop a circular economy in the game. And even then, you need to create sufficient demand for the objects that are going to exist in that circular economy, since it's an entirely fictitious economy. And so even if it appears at a certain point with a certain value that the numbers might make sense, you need to make sure that there's the conditions for those numbers to remain valid, which has not been the case in any play-to-earn game I've ever seen.
Oh, really? So let's dig into the numbers then and try and mine some sense out of this, shall we? Because this entire video has been extremely vague about where the actual money is coming from here. To even start playing Axie Infinity, you need to buy a team of 3 Axie NFTs, which are $200 each. But don't worry if you can't afford that, because you can just become a scholar and rent an Axie from a sort of, I don't know, Axie landlord?
What is up, YouTube? Bryson here, and today I'm going to be giving you my advice on how to earn a scholarship in Axie Infinity.
And then you can grind and grind and grind for hours on the game, but don't forget to have fun now, and your manager sits around taking a large chunk of your earnings. Yet when this system is in a game and absolutely no value is created whatsoever, well, yes, you guessed it. It relies on bringing more people into the system at the bottom, and then this carries on until there's an inevitable crash and those kids in the Philippines start earning below minimum wage. Not so fucking heartwarming now, is it, Mark Cuban? Impressively, Axie Infinity managed the incredible feat of creating an amalgamation of all of the worst parts of late-stage capitalism in one: a pyramid scheme structure, rentism, and the bullshit job phenomenon, in which everyone has become so obsessed with tying their self-worth to the work that they do that they disassociate the work from the actual value created. The kid in the Philippines fighting cartoons with each other, bullshit job. The woman on The Apprentice who sits in an office in front of a fake spreadsheet all day just for Alan Sugar to call her once a week to tell her to bring the contestants through to the boardroom, bullshit job. Yet our obsession with the 5-day work week has caused us to justify doing work for no reason, and Jeremy Corbyn was right, motherfuckers, but you're too busy rimming capitalism to notice you could be working less. Artists who have made money out of this trend are now successfully converted into automatic NFT shills, putting .eth at the end of their Twitter screen names, such as musician RAC. He reckons that if he's being exploited, then he'd like to be less. Artists who have made money out of this trend are now successfully converted into automatic NFT shills, putting .eth the end of their Twitter screen names.
Sorry, I was trying to look
such
at what
as
year he said he
musician
got into the
RAC.
space.
He reckons that if he's being exploited, then he'd like to be more exploited.
There weren't a lot of
And
NFTs in
he also reckons
2017.
that if you squint hard enough, the stock market and the US dollar is also a Ponzi scheme. A common tactic of crypto shills is to strip
Did an episode on this called "The World is a Ponzi Scheme and We All Live in It."
the phrase Ponzi scheme of all of its meaning. And it's not hard to see where he's coming from, since like many musicians he's been fucked over by the music labels and streaming platforms his entire career, and the one time that he's made money has been through selling his music as this sort of speculative asset. Beyond that, however, he's extremely vague about how this is supposed to work, but he seems convinced now that this is the solution for small-time artists barely making any money from their work. Trouble is, the logic is entirely flawed. RAC was able to make money through already having a platform, and that's the only real scarcity at play here. Attention. Here's a graph showing the median prices of sales in primary sales of NFT collections over a 1-week gold rush period. Looks pretty good at a glance, right?
Log
Until
scale.
you realize the y-axis is a fucking logarithmic scale. Here it is on a normal scale. 34% of these collections made $100 or less, which means that after various fees, they actually lost money. 20% made less than $92 after fees, and then 11% made a whopping $223 after fees, and so on. That's for an
And this is when the going was good.
entire collection of NFTs, which could be anything up to around 10,000 JPEGs. And it's funny that you really have to dig to find this information, kind of like how you have to dig to find the income disclosure statement of any MLM. If people were really making money, surely the marketplaces like OpenSea would be shouting from the fucking rooftops about their stats. Instead, just like MLMs, they're hyper-focusing their marketing on the few people at the top, making millions, and loads of those sales are probably wash trading anyway. And that's not even mentioning all of the artists that have had their artwork stolen and minted. And OpenSea got so many takedown requests that they just ended up stopping processing them. Great system, guys! The only people who win here are the 1% of artists with existing large audiences who actually make a profit. But that's still crumbs in comparison to Ether whales, who not only profited from the influx of buyers of Ether, but also profited from the minting fees of NFTs that didn't even sell or lost money. They profited from everyone. And then, of course, we had the influencer shitcoin epidemic. My baby left my heart broken. Told me to invest in his ICO token. Said allow me to the moon. I bought a hero pool. Here to rape my heart's liquidity pool. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored by Keeps. Did you know? Toilet bowl of social media, and now the plumbing is clogged. And it's not surprising that this happened because, well, crypto has allowed this to become extremely easy. All you have to do is go on a site like cointool.app, go to create token, choose which blockchain you want it to sit on, give it a name like Elon Moon, Doge Sponge Safe Musk, make the initial coin supply about 69,420 trillion if you really want. Then, because there's so many coins, whatever the market cap is, you can just make the buy-in price for one coin look dirt cheap. Then you want your mates to make a load of money too, right? So you do a whitelist and basically give a load of tokens to your mates so then they can save on gas fees before they're released to your idiot fans. Users who make the whitelist
Squiggly bits, I have no idea what that hoop is called.
and later sell their newly minted NFT gain a profit 75.7% of the time versus just 20.8% for users who do so without being whitelisted, Chainalysis said, citing OpenSea data. The data suggests it's nearly impossible to reap outsized returns on minting purchases without being whitelisted. So then you end up with Instagram models who have pivoted their entire careers to being NFT influencers.
A lot of them have pivoted back.
living off being on NFT drop whitelists, using their platforms to show them to their pleb followers as if the project's got an amazing roadmap, and bank on the fact that their followers are stupid enough to be too distracted by tits to even notice the rug pull.
It's your favorite crypto queen. I've just invested in Koinu Inu, and I'm super excited because they're starting a gaming platform. As always, this is not financial advice. I'm just letting you know what I'm investing in.
Hi guys, so hashtag ad and all that, but this is not financial advice, okay? But I'm about to tell you about Titty Ass Coin, okay? I'm hodling this one, guys. I know the last 79 coins I told you about did kind of crash, but they were not financial advice, and they also paid for this holiday, so I'm aping it right now on Titty Ass Coin, guys. I don't know if you've seen the roadmap, but it looks like the Nickelodeon Universe park map, so you know it's gonna be good. In fact, I think it might actually be the Nickelodeon Universe park map, but with like crypto buzzwords sort of scribbled over the top. But you know what? That doesn't matter, guys, because we're all gonna make it this time, alright? To the moon. I've spoken to the dev team on this one as well, and they all seem super legit. Like, one of them has a ponytail, and the other guy knows like basic HTML. So everyone in the Discord is either a bot or is showing signs of extreme cognitive impairment, so that's also a great sign.
I would argue severe signs of cognitive impairment are fundamental to building an effective and profitable NFT community.
Too. Okay, so get in now, not financial advice.
And if you can't be asked to make the project look legit enough to even get it on a semi-legit exchange like Coinbase, just slap it on a shitty one like PancakeSwap and get a bot to post about it to Reddit every 3 minutes. But of course, Coinbase eventually realized that being semi-responsible about the coins they allowed people to list on their exchange meant that they were losing customers to competitors, so they changed their tune, and now they're basically the same as PancakeSwap. So that's cool. People are literally left to do your own research when investing in a coin, and that never goes wrong. In the end, the whole scheme can cost you about $450. And that's how influencers like Ice Poseidon, with a brain so smooth you could use it as a curling stone, managed to shamelessly fleece his audience out of $500,000.
Yeah, I could give the money back. It is within my power. But I'm going to look out for myself and not do that.
Sure, I could be good, but bad means money, so bad I do? Not good.
I don't know what else to say. That's just the most honest answer.
It's like Bernie Madoff literally went and made a paint-by-numbers Ponzi scheme for children. Literally, Ryan's toy reviews could do it and probably make enough money to turn the entire world into a mystery egg if he wanted to. I just want my money back! Investing your money into an influencer's shitcoin is called, in the cryptoverse, an ICO. It's basically like investing in an IPO on the stock market, but with no securities regulations that require the company to be registered with the SEC, with complete information about the people running the organization known to the buyer, and all of the risks clearly spelled out. Any company that IPOs has a huge document written out by multiple lawyers, which the investors will get their lawyers to look through before aping in. But ICOs mean that any fraudster can now, in effect, pop an unregistered security on the market, completely anonymously and without consequence. And before I get hordes of people in the comments going, "But the SEC sucks, dude!"
They do.
Yes, it does. They often resort to fining scammers after the scam has happened because investigating them costs a lot of money and it might not always turn out to be a crime. But they are perpetually stuck in this impossible balancing act between preventing fraud and not stifling creativity in the finance sector. So right now they're just stuck in this crippling epidemic of Ponzi schemes within Ponzi schemes, and of course the people benefiting from all of this fraud are the people going to the regulators and saying, "Yo, this is just innovation, dude. Don't stifle innovation, man."
Good old... Wait. Yeah,
companies draw the line and say that enough is enough with this anti-innovation, quote, regulation by.
This is why I get mad at Representative Tom Emmer, who loves to get on Twitter and pop off about the SEC. Well, he was also like in Congress writing letters to the SEC being like, are you sure you should be investigating FTX? Are you sure you should be investigating XYZ? What if it's the future of finance? And that kind of like hypocrisy from people like Representative Tom Emmer makes it more difficult for the SEC to do their job, which again, they're mediocre at. But like part of the reason they're mediocre at it is because they lack the political will, because people like, again, Representative Tom Emmer are intentionally trying to make it so there's no political will for the SEC to actually engage in substantive investigations and interactions.
Enforcement. And then just decide to take their industry elsewhere to another country.
But there's something about crypto that scares people. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because it's new. But I remember in my banking law class when banks were first allowed to use computers to keep ledgers.
Anyone remember when Brian Brooks was at Binance US for like a total of like 4 months before going, I'm out of this shit?
People sued over that at the time. I remember when I was a second-year lawyer and we got email, and the ABA said lawyers couldn't use email because it would travel over this mysterious network of computers. These all seem ridiculous today, but it seems like we haven't really learned the underlying lesson, which is technology usually advances human flourishing. We have a regulatory system. Let's use it.
I agree, Brian Brooks. Let's make any of these exchanges which are trading securities register as securities exchanges and live up to the existing regulatory system. Glad we agree, Brian Brooks.
The exact same thing happened when they allowed Bernie Madoff to run a Ponzi
He doesn't really
scheme
agree.
for 30 years. Yeah, it went on for 30 years, during which he was reported to the SEC multiple times. He actually did innovate some methods that are still used in finance to this day, but that doesn't negate the fact that he stole $64.8 billion. The same happened with the crash in 2008 and the same with Enron. The SEC knew of the signs, but they didn't do anything. And these crypto shills and right-wing politicians are now trying to demonize the SEC, not for doing too little, but for doing too much. And the crypto market is currently in this perfect sweet spot in which lobbying from billionaire Silicon Valley investors can successfully convince regulators that this is actually the future, and all of this scamminess is just a symptom of new tech, and they'd better not put too much regulation on it, or all of the business from this exciting new tech will move abroad.
There are some
Yeah, it'll end up down in the Bahamas.
products that are legal in other countries and are just not legal here. We don't allow that in the United States. We do allow it in Canada. We allow it in Germany, Singapore, Portugal, and a number of other places. So if you're a developer of those products, there's no fuzzy line. It's super clear. You can't do that here. So you have to go abroad.
So we're behind the curve.
Unquestionably.
And because most of the regulators haven't got a fucking clue what a blockchain is, or have even caught up with what the fuck Web2 is doing yet,
will you commit to ending Finsta?
there's a rush to pocket as much cash as possible before any real restrictions are put into place. And who loses out? The retail investor, again. At best, at this point, I think we'll end up with crypto stuck in a legal limbo between lobbyists and regulators, similar to MLMs, who got subject to regulations which are supposed to require recruits to.
I'm hoping FTX forces some more substantial engagement by regulators, but we'll see.
Make more money from selling the products than from recruiting people, but these rules are not properly enforced and the grift continues, and they can even use the fact that they're legal to differentiate themselves from other MLMs who have been prosecuted under the law for being pyramid schemes. All it does is just give the ones who don't get caught more power. And I'm sure you've probably all seen this by now, but if there was one video in the world that would make you want to take all the cash out of your wallet right now, roll it up into a tight little tube and stick your cock right down the middle, screaming, "Fiat me daddy," it's Cryptoland.
Oh no, not Cryptoland. Oh god, not the age of consent is mental maturity, people.
Take a shot every time you hear the word crypto.
This is me, Christopher, a crypto degen with a crush for crypto kitties. I'm on my way to Cryptoland, the #1 crypto destination on Earth where crypto enthusiasts, or crypto landers like we're called here, can meet with like-minded individuals in real life.
No, you haven't taken a drug spiked with the source code of the Reddit homepage. This is real. I've unfortunately immersed myself so deep into the crypto world now that I understand every fucking joke in this video. And they're not funny. They're not funny at all.
You don't want to end like my Mount Gox friend.
Its creator had a vision of the Disneyland for crypto.
Did you guys catch the Quadriga CX and Mount Gox in there?
But it ended up looking more like they fed an AI bot with those randomly generated animated kids channels on YouTube.
My little monkey jumping on the bed.
And Your Nightmares, and it spat out 20 minutes of this shit. They enlisted the help of crypto shill for hire Kyle Chassé, who said that he bought an NFT which was supposed to buy him a plot of land on this island. An island that they didn't even own. He brags that he spent $1.3 million on it on his thumbnail, but when in reality some crypto sleuth discovered that the organisers actually slashed the price in half right before he bought it and changed it back right after. He still paid way too much for it.
I actually had some property. Should not have bought it. Couldn't have afforded it, but subprime mortgages, you know? So there's no loans or lending or subprimes or interest or anything like that.
And if you're thinking, how the fuck do people fall for this? This is insanely fucking stupid. Remember, this marketing is not aimed at you. It's aimed at vulnerable people who have been fucked over hard by capitalism. They want friends, a community, they want money. And just like MLMs, they have their ways of creating a community atmosphere by talking to each other in a sort of code and inside jokes, which this video represents. But as soon as you start fudding, your new friends are nowhere to be seen. They're being told that capitalism isn't the problem, it's actually the Federal Reserve, big banks and politicians, and they believe it because along with that story, they're being given an easy way out. It's the same reason your junk email folder is full of shit that looks like it was written by a fat-fingered ape with dyslexia. Don't ask me how an ape got diagnosed with dyslexia. That's not the point. The spelling is bad on purpose. They want to attract the people who are not put off by spelling mistakes because the people who are put off by spelling mistakes are a waste of their time. You might get a few back and forths from a semi-intelligent person, but once they realise what the deal is, they'll bounce, and all of that was a waste of your valuable scamming time. You need the extremely vulnerable and only the extremely vulnerable in from the start. They won't waste your time, they'll agree with everything you say and be unabashedly positive. And they don't even need to have money, they just need to be the cheerleaders that will convince the people with the money to buy in based on hype. Discords made for pumping new NFT collections and coins are ideal because as soon as someone even slightly fuds, you can immediately boost them out of the server, no questions asked. You can also easily convince them to do all of your marketing for free. In the case of Cryptoland, they allowed their recruited cheerleaders to earn a free NFT if they 1. Followed the Cryptoland Twitter, 2. Turned on tweet notifications, 3. Liked all of their tweets, 4. Retweeted all of their tweets, 5. Wrote meaningful tweets about Cryptoland, 6. Changed their Discord and Twitter profile pictures to a screenshot of the Nightmare video or to one of their NFTs, 7. Added Cryptolander to their username on Twitter and Discord, 8. Added a link to the Discord in their Twitter bio, 9. Invited 20 friends to the Discord, and 10. Were a fun and active user on the Discord. All fudders and even people merely
Just invite your 20 closest friends to this scheme.
asking questions or linking to the page that showed that the island was still up for sale were immediately banned. The sale of the Cryptoland island fell through, thankfully. They had plans though to make it into a sort of safe haven from the fiat environment, but when you strip that of all of the fluff words, they basically wanted a libertarian seastead, free from all of those pesky taxes and regulations, including the age of consent. So how is this being sold to us as the future?
Why don't you come to Cryptopia? It's even worse than Dystopia. There isn't even a fucking moose, and probably lots of xenophobia.
The Bitcoin Bitcoin bros come in two main groups. The ones who believe that Bitcoin will eventually wipe out fiat currency, they're generally called the maximalists, but we'll call them the maxi pads for fun. And then there's the other group who believe that Bitcoin should be forever used alongside fiat, so we'll call them tampons. So Bitcoin will never be widely accepted as a form of currency in businesses until it is stable, and it will never be stable until it is widely accepted. And at a larger scale, when it is potentially wider accepted, we meet different issues such as the scalability problem. If Bitcoin processed all of the transactions Visa does today, it will use as much electricity.
So this is one of the few things in this video that Mooncat gets pretty wrong, and it's by if you take the total energy consumption of Bitcoin and divide it by the number of transactions it does and then multiply it by whatever number of transactions need to get to, you do get this crazy number. But that's not what drives the energy usage of Bitcoin. What drives the energy usage of Bitcoin is effectively the price of Bitcoin, which then affects the value of the newly issued Bitcoins when you mine a block and the value of the transaction fees in that block. And so that value is what drives the energy use, because you're incentivized as a miner to deploy more and more hash rate until your energy costs approach the marginal value of the next Bitcoins you're going to earn. And so what drives the energy use is not really the number of transactions that are happening. What drives the energy use is the price of Bitcoin.
As the rest of the world put together, and will be even slower than it is now, but that's not the only problem. So the tampons are essentially arguing for the centralized gateways between fiat and crypto to perpetually exist forever, because we'll always need fiat currency. So in this school of thought, Bitcoin is only useful as a hedge against inflation, but the number only goes up because of the speculative belief that Bitcoin will have future uses. So it is a much riskier investment based on a tech use case. And tech investments are inherently risky, especially when you consider the inherent flaws of the blockchain technology. There are much more stable investments available, such as stocks and shares ISAs or index funds, but maybe they just love it when they lose 50% of their net worth because they have a humiliation kink. I don't know. So the maxi pads believe essentially that fiat is doomed. Long live Bitcoin, to the moon, and all of that. So the following use cases only apply if you never have to involve exchanges to fiat currency, because as long as you still need to involve centralized exchanges, basically nothing is decentralized. But this utopian view still has inherent flaws. It really is sweet how so many Reddit bros all of a sudden have this huge concern for Ethiopian and Nigerian farmers, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with the little graph on their Coinbase app.
I spent November of 2019 roaming around the continent of Africa. I went to Nigeria, I went to Ethiopia, Ghana, and I saw that the number one problem that entrepreneurs were working on there, they're all working on payments. And the most interesting of them were working on Bitcoin. Realistically,
poorer citizens of developing countries are, slowly but surely, getting banked. The adoption of mobile money is spreading. Cryptos, Silicon Valley tech CEOs, VCs, and Jack Dorsey all have a real sudden charitable streak in them, in the form of ensuring entrepreneurs in developing countries can find a way of being paid.
There's often another little move they'll use where they'll focus on Bitcoin's potential value as a wealth preservation mechanism for these individuals, rather than as actually like a new payments rails that they could use to fund businesses and stuff. And the reason for this is often that Bitcoin is a pretty poor payments rails, but what they're relying on is that like the idea of this wealth loss is a bigger threat, right? But like in actuality, in a lot of these places and globally, like as part of the world, there are a ton of people without extra money to put they don't have wealth to put into wealth preservation devices, right? And so the utility of Bitcoin or anything like that as a wealth preservation device isn't actually useful, despite the continued pitching of people like Goldstein or Dorsey.
The philosophy of the most successful tech startups in the past has been ease of use for the end user. So why are they not instead investing in streamlining mobile money solutions which are already being used widespread? and don't produce a MacBook Air worth of e-waste for every transaction, and will eliminate the need for a crypto exchange, and will eliminate the need for a Nigerian taxi driver to set up a MetaMask wallet and get paid for a ride with an extremely volatile digital token. Oh, is it because perhaps for Jack, number go up? So Jack Dorsey is now trying to become accepted in the Bitcoin community, whilst simultaneously being the face of social media censorship, especially censorship of their favourite orange guy.
And team.
How can you say that this is a currency for everyone in the world when you are the king of censorship? Bitcoin is about decentralization, and you have no right to be here today speaking about.
It's kind of hilarious because in the context of Twitter, like at least the reporting on the internal politics, Jack was the one shielding Trump for a long time.
We're working on that too. We're working on that too.
We'll get to that. I get it. We get to that. Can you please?
He spends his days on Twitter sharing anecdotal feel-good stories of people who have made money with Bitcoin and the rare cases in which it has supposedly helped people out of poverty. He's also trying to squash all competition for Bitcoin in one fell swoop by labeling them all as being owned by Silicon Valley VCs, which is not untrue, but it's not untrue of Bitcoin either. But trying to set yourself apart from other grifters is the first rule in the grifting handbook. Sure, there are issues with access to physical banking services and documentation, but the unbanked in third world countries mostly are because they
Jack Dorsey is like a quarter of Peter Thiel, if that.
just don't have enough money. This leads to the sharing of resources, so only one person in the family needs an account. The issue that needs addressing here is lack of income, not lack of a bank account. But that's not an issue that can be easily addressed with a flashy app without any vowels in its name. Tunnel-visioned tech CEOs and Silicon Valley VCs with ANCAP ideologies do not generally consider local conditions when they preach about banking the unbanked, and these ideas have come and gone before. There is no reason for
Part of the reason Libra ended in failure is because regulators basically stepped in and said, no, you're not building that, you're not building that. And then they didn't build it.
An Ethiopian farmer to use cryptocurrency, unless they're trying to organise an international crime syndicate or avoid capital gains taxes, which is unlikely.
It's secure!
With traditional banks, you have to jump through multiple hoops to verify your ID and send someone money. With blockchain tech, it's just a simple private key. This makes it vastly easier for someone to socially engineer someone's passphrase and gain access to their wallet. No 2FA needed, no name of your first hamster, and they have done it multiple times, and once it happens, it's irreversible. There's no bank to call, no credit card company to ask for a chargeback. You only have to spend 5 minutes scrolling down the blog Web3 is going great.
Which, Web3 is going great by Molly. Incredible website, highly recommend it. We did an interview on crypto. We did 2 interviews with Molly and Crypto Critics Corner 2 if you want to check those out.
.com to see that another high-level hacking, rug pull or NFT scam is committed pretty much every day. And you don't even need to be a criminal mastermind. All you need is good programming knowledge, some social engineering skills, and 0 morals. And to punctuate my point, the largest heist in American history was committed by 2 fucking idiots.
Russell Khan!
Fucking bad bitch. Go on, make me a sandwich. You annoying like vag is.
Heather R. Morgan and her husband, Ilya Lichtenstein, are suspected of laundering $4.5 billion worth of Bitcoin through various wallets and a dodgy marketplace, and transferred into fiat currency via gift cards, among some other methods. And what did they spend the money on?
Journalist, a writer, a CEO, and a dirty.
To be clear, they've not been arrested.
They probably did the original hack. They have not been arrested on those charges, but I laid out on ABC when I was on there why I think that Heather is the most likely hacker. Social engineering is something she sings about, and she interviewed the head of BitGo, who was providing custody for Bitfinex at the time.
On charges for the initial hack, but from what we know, it's quite possible that they carried out the attack themselves. One lyric in particular in one of her masterpieces is
Spearfish your password, all your funds transferred.
Almost definitely Bitfinex was spearfished. And what's interesting, and I've covered this on my blog, is we know for a fact Bitstamp was spearfished, and the Bitstamp hacker, their wallets interact with the Tether hackers' wallets and with the addresses of the Bitfinex hot wallet hacker. Isn't that a fun coincidence?
So spearphishing is like phishing, but with a PH, except instead of sending out one email or net and waiting for your victims to come to you, you intentionally set your sights on one victim. And
yeah, Sebastian, it was probably social engineering. They never released the security audit to say why, but if you look at Min Gun Sura's explanation of the most likely cause of the hack, which was compromise of a key, of their BitGo key, which was given too many privileges, and considering the pattern of other similar hacks at the time, I think social engineering is the most likely explanation.
you might say send them a cold email, gain their trust, and convince them to send over their details over to you that way. This is how hacks usually happen in Web 2 and Web 3 world. It's not someone in a hoodie and a V for Vendetta mask matrixing their way into the mainframe of a bank. It's very boring, polite emails, something Heather R. Morgan said that she was an expert at, or I'm sorry, a hacker mindset. The blockchain does not fix the inherent vulnerabilities of people when it comes to social engineering. And when you have a system that only requires a private key for access to funds and a pseudonymous system which already has tools built into it for laundering cash, then you've made it even easier for someone to steal $4.5 billion from you and spend it on this.
'Cause you suck like a vacuum cleaner.
Over the 6 years since the hack, either they've been pretty stupid the entire time or they've got sloppy with their laundering throughout the years. Who knows? But when authorities raided their apartment, among hordes of USB devices, cash and hollowed out books to hide it in, they found a burner phone in a clear plastic bag labelled burner phone and a file on their computer named Passport Ideas, and a spreadsheet on their cloud account which had addresses of all of their wallets and information about the assets inside of them, and some of them had file names such as dirtywallet.dat. Criminal masterminds. So it's not hard to see how, if you're able to remain anonymous and you don't have to use a complex web of Walmart gift cards to transfer your stolen funds into usable currency, crime on the blockchain is actually inherently incentivized. There is even more incentive for criminals to find bugs in a code, drain people's wallets and freely spend the stolen crypto in businesses around the world, or for bad actors to hide large-scale ransomware in the code for decentralized apps.
It's anonymous!
I don't know of any cases of that last one.
Private! So it's pseudonymous, meaning anyone who finds your wallet address can easily see your entire transaction history, and as soon as that wallet address is associated with your identity, that's your transaction history available on a public ledger for everyone to see. And that's not to mention that if someday miraculously Ethereum's smart contracts actually have some sort of utility, all of your data will be on the blockchain in order for it to work. Your mortgage, your medical records, everything you've ever posted on social media. Say perhaps someone doxed you or posted revenge.
This is one of the most underappreciated things with cryptocurrency, is the things that it is best at, censorship resistance and immutability, are weaknesses as much as they are strengths. It means you cannot stop payments that society would want to stop. You cannot remove things that society would want to remove. The entire purpose of these systems is that they enable the child pornographers to transact as freely as the dissidents or journalists you want to support. That is foundational to them, and that's a thing that many cryptocurrency advocates refuse to really grapple with.
Porn. It's immutable on an append-only database, unable to be deleted.
Allows money to be sent around the world instantly.
Delays in international wire transfers are mostly down to checks for fraudulent activity. The only reason you'd ever have an issue with this is if you were a criminal or Anna Delvey. It is true that it could be potentially used for sending funds to protesters if the state's banking system had cut them off, such as when this happened with the recent Canadian trucker convoy, and the Coiner Bros of course went, now we have a use case! We have a solution, guys! We have a use case for Bitcoin, finally! Only to find that they had to concoct a wild set of actions in order to change the computer money back into real money. This somewhat hilariously involved the composition of a publicly available Google Doc in which all of the proposed actions could have been easily intercepted by the police. Just some of the materials needed included printers, paper, ink, large pliers, leather gloves that cover wrists, screwdrivers, pens and paper, and 10 DVD discs. The actions would culminate in the participants smashing the USB printer to pieces in a hotel room that none of them were allowed to leave. Cash would have been easier. A simple scroll down the Bitcoin hashtag on Twitter makes it extremely clear where these people's priorities
God, that's a who's who of pieces of shit there.
lie, because regardless of whichever supposed war benefit they're currently peddling, they're clearly only bothered about their own pockets.
But you said Bitcoin isn't really doing anything. Right now, Bitcoin is actually saving people's lives. People are fleeing war-torn Ukraine. They're actually leaving to go to Poland. Are they taking their gold bullion bars? Absolutely not. And even if they did get to the border, people are absolutely corrupt. If they get to the border, authorities could say, sorry, can I have one of those gold
Bitcoin solves corruption, breaking at 10.
bullion bars and only let you in that case. So you don't really want to be snuggling up with your Bitcoin. Nobody wants to know that you own Bitcoin. That's the fundamental value.
Let me make this clear. Russia is actually attempting to use crypto to undermine the sanctions and the US dollar, and he tricked Vitalik Buterin into helping him do this. In a world run by Bitcoin or any crypto, wars will still be funded. For some reason they seem to think that fiat funds wars, and for some reason they think that crypto would never be spent on wars. It makes no sense, please.
Don't you guys remember back on the gold standard when there were no wars?
Bitcoin bros, put your Coinbase app away and touch some fucking grass.
But you can't print Bitcoin like the Fed prints money.
We're gonna come back to the Federal Reserve.
Did you guys know for a while there were a few billion Bitcoins because the code was written wrong and there was an overflow bug that resulted in basically unlimited issuance of Bitcoins? And that there have been other overflow bugs on Bitcoin forks too. Fun fact.
Reserve and monetary policy, but I'm going to point out here that Bitcoin's 21 million cap is 5 lines of code which could be removed at any time with a hard fork.
And I'm pretty confident it will get removed because right now, basically the entire security budget for Bitcoin comes from that issuance, with fees making up like 1% of that. And in order to maintain the same level of security as those go down, they're going to need fees to go up to a commensurate level. And so you're looking at like consistent $100 plus transaction fees on Bitcoin for the security budget to be secured. And the much safer solution is going to be to remove the cap and to issue more Bitcoins. But that is almost certainly going to be an incredibly contentious hard fork. We're going to see another schism in the Bitcoin community like we saw years ago with the block size debate in the Bitcoin community.
In the system. Just because no one wants the cap to be removed right now doesn't mean that this will always be the case. And this seems like a good time to bring up Tether. Oh fuck. Tether! Moving money in and out of the crypto ecosystem is hard and you have to pay taxes on it, so stablecoins have come about to allow people to hold their crypto in a token which is tied to the value of the US dollar. So stablecoins like Tether and USDC are also supposed to be fully backed by real dollars, but guess what? They aren't, and they lied about this for a very long time. This is another entire rabbit hole, but let's just say they
lied about their reserves by transferring funds into an account temporarily while a third party ordered to check to their reserves on a specific date. Then when the Paradise Papers came out, people found out that they were basically the same company as this huge exchange, Bitfinex, you know, just one of the 99% of exchanges that have suffered from a huge hack. And because they were lying about being backed fully by dollars, they could use Tether's dollars to bail out Bitfinex when they lost $850 million of their customers' cryptocurrency after a dodgy bank they were dealing with got shut down. And they lied about it, and the whole thing was started by a past Ponzi schemer, someone who got caught up in an online gambling scam
Libertarian who wears rare Pokemons in his hat.
Guys, this video killed me. So, stable coins hold a hell of a lot of power over the supposedly decentralized.
I threw a link to our playlist on Bitfinex and Tether into the chat. It's like 26 videos long. We can't get all the way into them. I want this video to be a somewhat reasonable length.
Crypto market.
That guy with the Pokemon in his hat was the Brock Pierce I mentioned earlier of Open Secret Infamy, and who was creating the human supply chains for digital assets. Yeah, that creep.
As a whole. And Tether got hacked in 2017 and $30 million was stolen. And in response to this, they hard forked the Omni blockchain that Tether resided on. And because Tether decided that even though the blockchain was saying the funds were in the hacker's possession, they decided, well, that's not what the blockchain should mean, because decentralized.
And so they literally went out and they sent a new version of the Omni client to all the exchanges, and the exchanges needed to run this new version because they had Tether integrated at their exchange, and in doing so froze the tokens on the blockchain, and then convinced the Omni team to write them a new version of the client that included code that it would allow them to freeze any tokens at any point going forward. And this is true still for any chain that Tether issues on. They can freeze the tokens at any time, and yet people act as if it's some reasonably censorship-resistant alternative to the banking system when you gave Juan Carlo Davicini the right to freeze them all at any time.
Means fuck all in this business, and it is a marketing buzzword to get you to buy into the system. Because Tether has got so much power, they could do this without using the usual mining consensus vote because all of the exchanges were in their pocket. You get me? A company that is powerful enough will.
This is why I love this video. She had to go so deep to get this, and she got it.
This will always be the case in the crypto space. And then it was found that Tether manipulated the price of.
I have my issues with the Is Bitcoin Untethered paper by Griffin and Shams, not the least of which is that if you remove the two most extreme data points, you see the relationship basically entirely disappear. I'm not convinced that that alone is evidence of Tether manipulating the market, but what we do have is very strong evidence of Tether issuing tethers that were by their own standards unbacked, and so we can debate what the effect that would have on the market is.
Bitcoin in 2017 by buying large amounts of it when it was declining.
Emperor Xenu, it is pretty low. Like if you look at Razzle-Khan and Dutch, it ended up being like 10% of their total, less than that. 1% of their total they were able to successfully launder and convert to fiat. Like especially once you've been hacked and those coins are flagged, it takes a bit of effort to mix them and get them clean enough to cash out.
With its own reserves. Cool, so you've basically recreated an unreserved central bank in your own little magic computer world that's completely manipulating the market. But one that's even worse than how bad you think the Federal Reserve is. How people seem to still be using Tether when it literally has worked against all of the core tenets of the crypto philosophy is beyond me. But again, it seems that as long as number go up, nobody cares.
It's decentralized, therefore trustless.
Systems tend to centralize as they scale, and blockchain is no exception. Bitcoin mining was mostly decentralized back in the noughties, with a few early adopters running single graphics cards in their homes, but it only took around 5 years for just 3 mining pools to have control over more than half.
2 right now.
Of the network, and the people using them now are suffering from all of the negatives of the decentralized aspects whilst using centralized apps built on the blockchain, so they're not actually benefiting from the decentralized aspects at all. They're actually only benefiting from the centralized bits, i.e. using OpenSea and exchanges to cash out into usable money, all things overseen by the evil government, but the entire ecosystem is being sold to them as decentralized. It's not at all. The only supposedly decentralized aspects of the platforms they're using are actually only hindering the users and the programmers. So let's hop back to the Bitcoin 0.1 release notes written by Satoshi Nakamoto in 2009. The root problem with the conventional currency is all the trust that's required to make it work. The central bank must be trusted not to debase the currency, but the history of fiat currencies is full of breaches of that trust. Banks must be trusted to hold our our money and transfer it electronically, but they lend it out in waves of credit bubbles with barely a fraction in reserve.
Yeah, it's Mises. We all know this.
We have to trust them with our privacy. Trust them not to let identity thieves drain our accounts. Okay, so what have we ended up with?
Everybody putting their trust in increasingly centralized mining pools, everyone putting their trust in buggy code written by a human, everyone putting their trust in centralized APIs to connect apps to the blockchain, centralized JPEG selling platforms, everyone putting their trust in Bitcoin whales not to suddenly crash and leaving everyone with pennies, breaches of trust involving wash trading, painting the tapes, selling securities fraudulently, no privacy on a public ledger, a system rife with account hacks through stealing people's identity, all of it backed up by stable coins that are not backed up by real dollars and manipulate the market.
In the
Sounds
case
like
of
a good
Ethereum,
system.
the amount of ether that can be mined is not capped, but it is entirely reliant on code written by this man. It is of course imperative that people have to buy in to any change in the code. As has been shown before, whichever chain Vitalik Buterin is behind, that's the chain that the whales are going to go with, and that's the chain that the underlings will follow, no matter how much these people think.
On Crypto Critics Corner, we did another episode kind of about how not decentralized many of these chains are at a fundamental level, and what we point to are stablecoins and their ability to basically decide fork choice. That's called stablecoins will fork your chain if you want to fork, if you want to check that out.
This is a purely decentralized system. There is an unusual personality cult surrounding Buterin, and people respect him.
Yo, difficulty Ice Age meltdown. Layer 1, Layer 3, 927, ternary. Build your own hash functions for maximum security.
In the same way, even though we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, they have been active on the internet in the past, and nothing is stopping them from becoming active again and
I think there's one thing stopping them.
proposing a fork in the future. And being the owner of an estimated $73 billion worth of Bitcoin, or 5% of the total supply, I wonder whether people would choose the fork that Lord Satoshi proposes or the one that tanks in value. Sounds super decentralized to me. In the case of blockchains,
Maybe jail if it's Paul LaRue, squiggly bits, but I still think it's probably Hal, or Hal was one of the major contributors to it, and Hal has other things preventing them from coming back.
planning on moving to a proof of stake system, the consensus vote on the chain are given to the proportion of the amount of money you have, meaning wealthy individuals and companies can effectively fork a chain to their preferred code if they achieve more than 50% of consensus votes. And with Bitcoin's wealth distribution looking similar to that of North Korea's, does that sound entirely impossible to you? It's incredibly difficult to get a coiner bro to engage with any of these arguments, however. I've seen enough MLM Huns in my time become convinced that their shitty face creams are God's jizz just because they think it's their ticket out of being fucked in the ass by capitalism, day in, day out. The number one rebuttal to all of this fudding always comes in the form of, oh, well, it's early days. This was relentlessly shoved in people's faces during the Super Bowl halftime show, in which all ads were trying to spread FOMO, one of them even comparing the invention of crypto to the invention of the wheel, forks, toilets, the moon landing, light bulbs, the Walkman, even democracy. Matt Damon basically calls you a puss boy for not investing in one of them.
History is filled with almosts. With
Those ads really hit differently after the crash, don't they?
those who almost adventured.
Equating an athlete scaling a rock in freezing temperatures to you sitting on your ass and signing up to crypto.com to purchase a fucking JPEG because Justin Bieber did. I'm not sure I can think of one revolutionary invention in history which had to try so hard to convince the entire populace to invest in it before it had even been proven useful to society. But also calling it early days. We're 13 years in now. In some aspects, I agree, but I at least think there should be some evidence of a tangible use case by now that can't be done on Web 2 protocols. HTML was invented in 1993, so in a way it's like the 2006 of blockchain right now. And what were we doing on the internet in 2006? I had a MySpace profile, and Matt Damon wasn't on TV telling me I'm a pussboy loser for not using MSN Messenger. I kinda wanted to do it anyway. Moxie Marlinspike in January this year composed a blog in which he criticised the Web3 protocol. His main points were that no one would ever want to run their own server, and huge parts of it are still centralised, such as the APIs used to connect the MetaMask wallets to the chain. And Vitalik Buterin responded with various assertions that all of this was coming. But here's the fundamental problem with believing that Web3 utility is on its way. Because a blockchain needs to pay miners to mine to make it work, a blockchain needs a native currency. So Vitalik Buterin comes along and makes Ethereum. Ethereum's currency is called Ether. Before Ethereum is released to the public as this revolutionary blockchain tech, Vitalik...
There are a lot of crypto advocates who don't know that the name for the token in the Ethereum protocol is Ether, and they will call the token Ethereum. Like, this is why I love this video, because you can tell that Georgie Mooncat really did her research to understand this before producing it, to recognize that the actual name of the token is Ether.
A load of his mates, including Peter Thiel, get given a load of Ether before it shoots up in value. This is called a pre-mine. It doesn't matter whether Ethereum is a good tech or not, because your software developers will come along anyway to make some cash. These software developers will buy a load of Ether and then say, hey, we've got this great idea for giving this blockchain some utility, and then they market their proposed utility and then promote an ICO to get people to invest in this proposed utility with the hope of making money. And among a lack of securities regulations, swathes of inexperienced retail investors pour their cash into a project that they know nothing about. There's a name for bogus software promises already, and it's called vaporware. Vaporware is promises of software that never materialize and only exist to prevent customers from switching to a different solution. So the vaporware shillers make money from the ICO and the Ether shooting up in price, and in turn, Vitalik and his whale mates profit from the Ether shooting up in price, and the software developers have no reason to make the software actually fulfill its goals at all, because they've all already made a fuck ton of money. With the invested money, they've got two choices. They can either ride out the vaporware promises for as long as possible, waiting for the Ether to go up even more based on the bogus promises of other vaporwares, or they can rug and take the money and dip with no consequence. Either way, Vitalik Buterin wins, other Ether whales win, the software developers win, and nothing of true utility ever gets built. In the real world, when a company goes public, if you don't provide real value to the public, you lose money. But why, oh why, would Matt Damon be calling us pussboys if blockchain is useless? Well, there's a lot of billionaires and millionaires stuck in the system who want to pump the bag and cash out. But there's also a lot of people who legitimately want this technology to be revolutionary, and we have to understand why.
Writing this script caused me physical pain. I'm serious. This video broke my brain. Now I have to leave posts on r/Bitcoin like I think the Federal.
This part of Mooncat's video has been described in comments and other reviews as one of the most controversial, or the part where she went off the rails. There's a couple of points I'm going to add some additional context on, but I really think that she got the goal of many of these participants right. Even though the goal of these participants runs against the stated ethos of the cryptocurrency space. And I think things published since then have further supported her point, like Balaji's book, The Network State. There's a review of it on Protos, if you don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to go through that a little bit more as we go through this section.
Reserve actually introduced some beneficial fiscal policies. Just to feel something again.
Philosophy behind Bitcoin is all depriving the government of any power over monetary policy. To explain the way that Bitcoin is coded, the digital mining of Bitcoin is supposed to reflect the mining of gold. So the increase in Bitcoin supply is supposed to happen around the same rate that gold was mined. So back in 2010, you could mine a few blocks an hour on your Pentium processor. But as time went on, the mining of gold got increasingly difficult and slowed down, just as mining Bitcoin gets increasingly difficult as time goes on. And people have to buy more mining nodes and burn down more forests, etc. to get the same amount of coin. If you can prove you've done the work to the rest of the network of computers, you're allowed to enter the little Bitcoin lottery, which awards you with a bit of a Bitcoin. This is exactly what proof of work is. You've got to prove you've done the
If you're the miner who gets the block, you're rewarded with several Bitcoins at this point. I think it's still like 6.25, but often your mining is part of a pool, and so the amount that goes in the pool is then split by hash rate among all participants in the pool.
work, you've got to prove that you've burnt down a forest. Bitcoin is coded to reflect the gold standard. So this is the monetary system we had until the 1930s. And since many coiner bros don't seem to be aware of what happened in history, let's explain this properly.
In the roaring 20s, the post-war economy was booming, and the rich were thinking, hey, you know what's even cooler than money? More money! So greedy people thought that buying stocks with the money that they actually had wasn't enough. So they started buying more stocks with bank loans, and the greedy banks were like, cool, more interest for me, bro. I don't foresee any closures happening here.
Foreshadowing is a narrative device.
Companies were having more money chucked at them than a sexy stripper in a sleazy speakeasy. They didn't know what to spend it on anymore, and because people had already bought the stuff that they needed, they started to buy stocks instead. And there was way too much money sloshing around in the system without any actual products being produced or bought by customers. Wait, does that kind of sound familiar? People started to notice the lack of any actual value leaving the system, and panic began to spread, and people ran to the banks to take all of their money out. Banks at the time were very small and had to sell assets and take out loans themselves to give people their deposits back. This sucked all of the money out of the economy at once, and a deflationary spiral happened. Prices dropped, businesses cut costs, people got fired, nobody had money to spend on goods anymore, inventory built up, prices dropped even more, ad infinitum. Then, during the 1930s, the Great Depression was swinging its dick hard in the faces of the poor as unemployment soared. But the Fed Res didn't yet follow any sort of fiscal policy for injecting money into the system. The US and European central banks still followed the gold standard and were refusing to give it up. But the UK was like the cool guy at the gold party, and when we left the gold party in 1931, gradually over the next 5 years, all the other countries were like, yeah, this gold party kinda sucks, and by 1936 all countries were out and smoking some green.
So this is unrelated to this part, but Emperor Zeno asked a good question, which is why crypto advocates think that each halving is going to kick off a bull run. It's generally because they misunderstand the direction of the relationship. They see that the cost to produce bitcoins is generally like tracking the value of the bitcoins. So they think that as fewer bitcoins are being produced, and with this existing mining, that means that the price of bitcoin will need to roughly double to account for that change. Whereas what's actually happening is the price of Bitcoin has happened to go up about that much in that period, and the difficulty adjustment mechanism of Bitcoin then adjusts the amount of energy usage that's happening, the amount of cost that's being expended to mine these Bitcoins as a function of that price. And so they're looking at the relationship backwards and making the wrong conclusion.
At the way cooler, much more laid back Fiat after party. In that same year, John Maynard Keynes came through and dropped his smash hit, The General Theory of Unemployment, Interest and Money, and told the world's governments that if they bought 12 hard copies each, they'd all get a free Keynes Friend NFT. And that's why we all follow his teachings on fiscal policies to this day. Actually, it might have been because it turned out they worked pretty well. Because securities fraud was rife in the lead up to the stock market crash. Wait, does that kind of sound familiar? The SEC was created in 1933 along with the FDIC, which acts as a sort of bank insurance policy that the banks pay a premium for. And this ensures that if a bank ever fails ever again, everybody's deposits would actually be protected up to a certain amount. Not everybody was happy with the retirement of the gold standard and the inception
exception of the Fed Res, however, especially the rich. So wealthy businessmen plotted to overthrow President Roosevelt and replace him with a dictator. Thankfully, this never happened, but you could probably call what's happening right now Business Plot 2, Blockchain Boogaloo. Cut to German school children being read stories from a pamphlet called The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It is Nazi Germany, 1933, and Hitler is using the Great Depression to gain power. The belief of a planned secret world domination spreads, along with the belief that Jewish people are controlling the press and the central banks, and slowly devaluing your money through inflation to keep it for themselves. Wait, does that kind of sound familiar? They recommend buying gold to protect yourself, one of the main assertions being that gold equals money. Wait, does that kind of sound familiar? These ideologies became inextricably linked with wealthy businessmen who still believed in the gold standard. Eugenics and debunked bell curve theories gained traction, a science funded by the wealthy industrialist owners class. A cult was formed based on an obsession with the gold standard. The same man who started that cult.
So the reason I say that I think Mooncat gets this right, and people are not giving her enough credit for this section, is there are a lot of fascists who are interested in Bitcoin for fascist reasons. That's not to say necessarily that anyone who likes Bitcoin is a fascist, or even that the majority of people who are using Bitcoin are, but that there are those who are benefiting from it. Alex Jones keeps getting large individual payments to a Bitcoin wallet he controls from someone. I talk about in my video about organic fresh coin, some indicted Florida Republican consultants who it looked like money laundering. We don't know it was money laundering, but it looked like they were using Bitcoin and organic fresh coin to launder money. And like Steve Bannon, Brock Pierce, Roger Stone, all these people keep getting involved and associated with cryptocurrency because they see it as a useful means to their end.
Went on to create the Freedom School, which birthed the modern American libertarianism movement.
They require a license to drive. What's next? Requiring a license to make toast in your own damn toaster?
Ooh, fun fact, Charles Koch was one of the students. The ideologies of the Freedom School have weaved their way through the last century, with reincarnations through various libertarian organizations and figures such as Ron Paul and Murray Rothbard, who were also strong gold standard proponents. In 1997, libertarians...
And part of the thing is I think there's a lot of non-fascists who end up convinced by like these kind of monetary talking points, which sound very serious and very accurate in all these things. And they end up espousing fascist principles because they're idiots who don't actually understand what's going on, not even necessarily because they believe in the tenets of fascism.
James Dale Davidson and William Rees-Mogg,
yep,
yes, that is his dad, published The Sovereign Individual, expressing disdain for pesky taxes and pushing a future of sound money via some sort of digital cash. And our mate Peter Thiel loved this so much he wrote a foreword.
Fuck Peter Thiel.
We'll come back to him. Okay, since
fucking sexist, anti-democracy asshole.
the 1930s, there have been two main economic schools of thought that fight over the cause of that global financial crash. Keynesians mostly fought to remove the gold standard and introduce fiscal policy, and Austrian school economists or monetarists fought to keep it, blaming governments printing our money for all of our problems. Although various policies from both sides have been implemented over the years, the argument to leave the gold standard behind has prevailed. It is widely considered among economists today that this is what helped lift the economy out of the depression. And look, I am not a fucking economist, okay? I can only tell you objectively what's happened in the past, and that there is 99% consensus among all leading economists today that a return to the gold standard right now would be a pretty fucking bad idea. On the contrary, have any conversation with a Bitcoin bro and you'll soon find that they believe that they've earned a master's level economics degree awarded by the fucking school of Reddit, and they actually believe that a coded in monetary policy devised by one person in 2008 is the answer to everyone's fiscal woes. The number go up brainworm.
There's also, and this is like why you'll sometimes hear me talk about the religion of Bitcoin and why I think having Satoshi as this messianic figure who no one knows his real identity is so important to the current iteration of Bitcoin. Because to continue to believe that like this monetary policy is perfect, this conception of the protocol is perfect, all these things are perfect, you need to have it come from a person beyond reproach. And the only kind of person who can beyond reproach is not a person, it's a figure, it's a god, it's a messiah. It is Satoshi Nakamoto. And so if Satoshi were to ever come out, like let's say it was Paul LaRue, like we talk about in a recent episode on Crypto Critics Corner, and he's finally out of prison, he gets his computers back, he's able to dig underground and find his steel plate with his keywords on it, type them in and get his wallets back. If he moves one of those coins, he contributes to the destruction of the system he's created, which is also one of the reasons why I think it's Hal. It made so much sense for Satoshi to have their interaction with this other person to try to identify them as not Satoshi, and why like Hal contributing a couple bug fixes to the early Bitcoin helps it make it look like this person is not Satoshi, because Hal was already struggling with medical bills and things like that, and so maintaining the ability to potentially tap those assets was valuable.
Are real. And if you're an r/Bitcoin bro currently writing me a lovely thesis in the comments about the fucking Cantillon effect, I respectfully ask you to instead write your comment out in Notepad on a cheap laptop with Windows XP installed, burn the file to several DVDs, post the DVDs to a neutral third party, then ask them to BlackBerry your comment to a USB printer in a remote hotel room, go to the hotel room and don't leave until you've smashed the printer to pieces with a screwdriver. Selling a hedge against inflation to vulnerable people is not even a new scam. Glenn Beck peddled a scheme in which people would be pressured to buy gold at an inflated price with the promise that it would increase in value over time, using hard salesmen and pressure tactics to convince them that the dollar would be inflated to near zero. The company was eventually forced to refund $4.5 million to customers. The same thing is happening right now with Bitcoin, except this time there will be no one to sue because the salesmen are hexagons on Twitter. When I was researching this section of the video, all videos I could find on YouTube of people arguing that we were on the brink of another global financial crash because of rising inflation rates were also shilling dodgy looking courses. And this is true of all of the Bitcoin and crypto bros on Twitter. How can you trust anyone to give advice on a stock that they're personally benefiting from? Yet no one in the community seems to give a single fuck, as long as number go up. And the demonization of inflation in the mainstream press, dubbed by Republicans as Bidenomics, merely to use as a weapon against him, is not helping. The use of the words freedom and depriving ordinary people of value when translated simply means freedom for the rich, not taking money away from the rich. And it has meant this since the inception of conspiracy theories surrounding the Federal Reserve, and it still means this in the Bitcoin community now. For those in the back,
you're parroting the same talking points as Nazis!
Over the last 100 years, the Federal Reserve
There's few things Nazis like more than useful idiots.
has created bubbles and burst them, enslaved us with debt, and destroyed our purchasing power through inflation. Yes, it's been a wonderful lie for the bankers. There are striking parallels in Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life to the lies and tricks that real bankers used to create the Federal Reserve.
And then they were shocked when Jordan Peterson was announced as a speaker at a Bitcoin event.
Are we the baddies?
0.01% of people.
It's like these same people should have gotten a sinking feeling in their stomach when they saw Bill Clinton and Tony Blair confirmed for the fucking FTX crypto conference in the Bahamas.
People invested in Bitcoin own 27% of Bitcoin right now. Who do you think is going to win here in the long run? How is that wealth all of a sudden going to be redistributed to the poor. You're not subverting the system. The system has already subverted you. You aren't getting rich. You're buying the Winklevoss twins another yacht. How about the people who are unable to buy a now or benefit from generational Bitcoin wealth? The people who can't afford to buy a now but who would like to have children in the future. Onto Ethereum. To understand Ethereum, I think it would be helpful to provide a quick background on Peter Thiel. In the 80s, Peter was at Stanford University, serving as editor-in-chief of the Stanford Review, a conservative libertarian newspaper. He then went on to co-found PayPal. Thiel wanted PayPal to be what people believe cryptocurrency provides today, a hedge against inflation, except facilitated by giving customers easy access to foreign currencies. He now regards the company as it is today as a failure of PayPal's original goal, and in 2015 on a Reddit AMA he mentioned
He also has said that women should not be allowed to vote.
his interest in Bitcoin, fulfilling this vision for him. After selling PayPal in 2004, he went on to co-found Palantir, a data analysis.
Literally, Palantir is like if you ask the question, just how evil can you make a data analysis firm? They were like, well, we have a solution for that.
Firm. They stated that they could use their knowledge of fraud detection software in the fintech industry and apply this to a wider spectrum of datasets to detect terrorist activity on the internet.
And like, this is potentially possible. Like, in my last job before I started at Protos Media, I was a data scientist for a firm that did algorithmic detection of potential fraud in the pharmacy space. And like a lot of the outlier detection techniques that you would use there, we were working on figuring out how to apply to medical data and similar data sets like that. So often these algorithms do have potential utility outside of that. But what Palantir actually does is just like feed the defense agency and a bunch of other evil projects.
And their first backer was the CIA. Clearly building up an increasing interest in the harvesting of data, it's not surprising why in 2004 Peter dropped $500,000 into Facebook, becoming the first outside investor. He acquired 10% of the company and a position on the board. In 2013, Palantir controversially became involved in the Cambridge Analytica scandal. Cambridge Analytica had gained access to 87 million Facebook profiles without the user's permission and used the data to target political ads. And it was this that experts believe may have swung the Brexit vote in Leave's favour. It was alleged by a whistleblower that multiple Palantir employees sort of helped them with this. Interestingly, Cambridge Analytica attempted to start its own crypto.
Oh, Dragon Coin was such a shit show. Google it if you want, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Currency, Dragon Coin, for the specific purpose of harvesting people's data. It was marketed to the Chinese public as a way to gamble in casinos on the island of Macau because gambling regulations in China were rather restrictive. But the project was abandoned once the
There's a shit ton of money laundering through casinos in Macau.
Scandal came to light in 2018 and the company was shut down. The way that Cambridge Analytica was talking about it, they were viewing it as a means of being able to basically inflict government control and private corporate control over individuals, which just takes the whole initial premise of blockchain technology and turns it on its head in a very dystopian way. The year after Cambridge Analytica collapsed among a sea of controversy, in 2013, a young Russian man called Vitalik Buterin wrote the white paper for Ethereum. And in 2014, the Thiel Fellowship funded Vitalik Buterin with $100,000 to drop out of that stupid woke college that was no doubt poisoning his brain with evil multiculturalism and holding him back, and got him to pursue Ethereum.
I don't think Vitalik is in any way like a Peter Thiel stooge or anything like that. He's not a Peter Thiel cutout like you'll see Roger Stone use and things like that. I think Peter Thiel understood that Ethereum was potentially valuable, and he wanted to be able to influence that as much as possible. And so Vitalik was a useful way to achieve that, if that makes sense.
full-time. In 2020, the NHS asked Palantir for help in battling the spread of the pandemic. Palantir charged the NHS just £1 for their services. They didn't
How charitable.
care about the money. They just wanted the data. The NHS gave Palantir access to millions of British citizens' medical records with which they could train their data analysis models. In 2017, Bitcoin shot up in price when his VC, the Founders Fund, bought an estimated $15 to $20 million worth. I don't think it's a coincidence that the same people who are funding CIA-backed data analysis firms have direct ties to the Cambridge Analytica scandal and are scraping NHS data are also funding blockchain technology. Do you really think Web3 is going to be about privacy and being in charge of your own data? In 2017, the Teal Network came together in the UK. This is a network of conservative academics, including Jordan Peterson, who are attempting to influence government policy on free speech. Free speech being code for normalizing white nationalism. Palantir's chief of staff has attended meetings with Christian theologians at Cambridge University's Faculty of Divinity, with Jordan Peterson in attendance. Their common concern was the increasing threat
And this is the part where Minkat often gets accused of being the most conspiratorial, but Steve Bannon is buying up old fucking monasteries in Italy, and Brock Pierce is buying up old fucking monasteries in Puerto Rico, and Steve Bannon is creating these schools for traditional Christianity out of these, and he's running his own cryptocurrency bullshit and scams and stuff. And so I think it's reasonable to look at the alliance between cryptocurrency and these rising dangerous forces.
From the advancement of a liberal agenda to traditional Christian religious and theological beliefs, including an unnerving fascination with race science. Unknown to most, Peterson seems to be sympathetic to scientific racism despite disavowing far-right views, but tends to only admit this, and in carefully guarded terms, in specific discussions.
There are profound and virtually
I don't think you're allowed to have a conversation with Stefan Molyneux unless you're willing to endorse race science.
irremediable differences in people's cognitive performance, and that those differences have a very solid biological and heritable basis. The Ashkenazi Jews, for example, have on average a 15-point advantage over the rest of the Caucasian population, which is sufficient to account for their radical overrepresentation in positions of authority and influence and
fuck you, Jordan Peterson. Fuck you. Fuck you. Shut the fuck up.
in the 1990s.
Peter has now left his position on the board of Facebook so he can spend more time supporting the campaign for Donald Trump's re-election, being Silicon Valley's most outspoken supporter of him.
Now we are told that the great debate is about who gets to use which bathroom. This is a distraction from our real problems.
Hey, fuck you, Peter.
Who cares?
He's now heavily invested in Ethereum, Bitcoin, and EOS blockchain technology, and in addition has direct control of the most advanced data algorithms in the world. In 2011, Peter's plans of developing a private island free of all government regulation was scuppered when he came to realise that it was not quite feasible. The residents of the nearby French Polynesian islands had argued that they didn't get much say in the proposed plans to build the supposedly self-sustaining islands just off their shore, and only benefited the rich residents wanting to avoid tax. Funny that. This is a phenomenon libertarians have always dreamed of, and it's called seasteading.
Innovative political systems could serve humanity better than governments do today. That's why we work to enable seasteads, floating cities which will give people opportunities to peacefully test new ideas about living together. The most successful will become thriving new societies, inspiring change around the world. We're creating this future.
This idea was very clearly recreated in Balaji's network states, but without the necessity initially for the physical space, which allows them to test out a bunch of these different ones and see which one is going to attract the most useful set of idiots before they actually build the infrastructure.
because governments profoundly affect our lives, and improving them would unlock enormous human potential.
The aim of Ethereum, it seems to me, is Thiel's second chance at seasteading.
And again, this is one of the parts that people would say is too conspiratorial, but like it fits so consistently with Balaji's vision for Web3, with Peter Thiel's vision for cryptocurrency, and even with some of the like Glenn Weil influenced radical markets ideas in cryptocurrency.
He wants to cyber seastead on a cloud economy, beholden to no government regulations,
Network
and
states.
no tax. But he needs people to jump onto his seastead. And what better way to get people to jump than to tell people that there's treasure on the island? Crypto is worthless as a currency, but it's the perfect marketing strategy. It means Google and Facebook will no longer have all of Silicon Valley's precious data, but the largest companies to build on the blockchain will instead. And they won't be held back by silly regulations like GDPR if they get their own way. And remember, a blockchain is immutable. They'll potentially have access to a much larger pool of data than Google and Facebook have. Right.
Again, Balaji in his book talks about how having this information stored on the blockchain helps you recreate what is, in his mind, the truth of history, right? And so like it's not just about having access to this information for better ad targeting, but to be able to construct your own narrative of what the history of the world looks like.
Right now, this isn't the masses fighting the 1%. This is the 5% fighting the 1%. For data. Sure, you can choose to have an NFT of your medical records on the chain.
Don't.
But we will eventually get to the point where it's made so easy and convenient for you to have, say, your medical records or your mortgage details on the chain that it would be almost stupid not to. We're already on the trajectory towards completely transparent data profiles right now. We purchase more and more devices and download more and more apps every day for the purposes of convenience, and we're beginning to accept that this just means that your data will belong to that company. But in the future, it will belong to all companies that build on the blockchain. It would be stupid not to build your app on the blockchain. There would be no hope of your tech startup being competitive if you didn't. As Satoshi Nakamoto said himself, it takes advantage of the nature of information being easy to spread but hard to stifle. They would like a society governed by code written by them, without having to deal with the inconvenient nuances of a progressing society involving racial tensions or the experiences of trans people or Congress holding them back with rules and regulations. But the world isn't a logic puzzle that a Russian computer programmer can just code us out of. The human experience will never escape feelings and needs that go beyond rigid code. This is a utopian vision based on an engineer's entirely systemic analysis of how a society should be governed. Cultural and political contexts eradicated. The entire system is hard-coded to realize the whims of the richest in society. A free market is a type of democracy, but one where the poor get the fewest votes. And this is exactly how a DAO works, and this is exactly how proof of stake works. Consensus power over the whole chain for the rich. Crumbs for the poor. And you'll be so poor, you'll be compelled to sell more of your data to the rich. This was already proven with the catastrophic failure of Ethereum's first ever DAO, the DAO, when the blockchain was hard forked to reverse a hack, draining their investors of 50 million.
Again, I think our episode, Stablecoins Will Fork Your Chain If You Want to Fork, is a good talk about kind of the dynamics of contentious forks.
Dollars. The VCs didn't want to lose their money, so
we talked about DAOs too in an episode on Crypto Critics Corner where we focused in on DAOs, and I talked a little bit about the DAO hack and what it showed about crypto governance if you want to go a little deeper on that.
though they changed the rules. The unforked chain, Ethereum Classic, still exists, but its crypto is only worth $25 now. So I wonder why most people chose the chain that the rich people chose. And if you really want a sinking realization of how bad this could get if it were devoid of any regulation, just Google assassination politics. Back to present day and blockchain technology.
One of you shouted that out in the chat already.
Technology advocates are pushing the idea of social media on the blockchain. On a protocol which records the history of everything you've ever done online, the incentive to remain completely anonymous is absolutely paramount. This could give rise to an increase in far-right ideologies peddled online, culminating in terrible situations if left to develop unregulated. It's quite hard to conceptualize what the future they're envisioning would look like right now, in much the same way that someone in the 80s couldn't envision what the iPhone can do right now. So try to think of it like this. Bitcoin wants to be a simple peer-to-peer payment app on your iPhone. Ethereum wants to be the iPhone. All of the data on the blockchain is the large chip in this iPhone. It's a ginormous financial history, your life story, your loves, your hates, everything. Based on this ginormous database, using patterns that AI has found, it can accurately predict the actions of any human being on Earth, even if you go fully off-grid and none of your personal data has been contributed. Now imagine that the DAOs, the large companies that build on the blockchain that will inevitably become very powerful, are the main apps on your home screen. So one of them could be a marketing company DAO. A company could come along to this marketing company DAO, perhaps a pharmaceutical company selling drugs, and they could say to the marketing DAO, I want you to use all the data you have on the blockchain to start advertising my drugs to not just everybody who might need them now, but everybody who is likely to need them in the future. I would like you to plant our brand into their brain 5 or 10 years in advance. Hey, why not maybe push them into becoming addicted to other products that will cause them to need our drug in the future? And then say you might have another app on this Ethereum iPhone called the Military Industrial Complex. So fuck knows who will have access to those powers at that point, but the Military Industrial Complex could be one huge DAO. Based on the data, it could draw out an entire roadmap for invading a country based on its weakest entry points.
So again, this sounds like kind of wildly speculative, right? But like Balaji's network state and like their talk of history and storing this information on the blockchain does kind of give away that this is a thing that has been discussed, even if it's unlikely to reach this point because of other limitations of the technology.
And weakest individuals. It could disseminate extremely intelligent failed propaganda to citizens. The war could be over in minutes. The algorithm would immediately decide who lives and who dies, only responding to votes cast by anonymous and wealthy token holders. And just in case you were thinking this sounds far-fetched, Peter Thiel's company, Palantir, have already had their algorithms used to decide which ICE detainees to arrest. It has been used to fuel the biggest deportation raid in US history, the infamous Brock's 120 raid and the 107-11 raids. He already oversees the algorithms that decide the fates of immigrant families' lives. During that huge US raid, 443 people were arrested, and almost none of them could be prosecuted. Yet there was no human to blame for the poor profiling. Where code is king, you can only blame the algorithm. Oh, and he plans to live until he's 120 years old by taking HGH and blood transfusions from the young.
$1 trillion.
Yep, Vampire Peter Thiel.
And now the mark. Oh! Oh! It went to 0!
But will the data revolution happen? That's a tough one. I do believe this is a bubble and that all of the tech is clearly overvalued for reasons I've laid out, but it doesn't mean that it will pop in spectacular fashion, depending on how long the VCs and the vaporware developers can drag it out. If it does deflate or pop, however, the VC investors will not allow it to leave their billionaire clients in the red. Without access to sophisticated algorithms, retail investors will be left in the dirt. That's just an inevitability, and the worrying concentration of those with far-right conspiratorial tendencies who have bought into these schemes may have the rug spectacularly pulled out from under them, and they're going to get angry. Will they turn to socialism to try and fix these problems? I don't think so. The crypto evangelist population skews heavily towards a sort of new age, libertarian, anti-government, right-wingism, and when they see their financial dreams evaporate, they will likely set their sights for revenge on the things that they already despise. The broad effect will lead to a large number of newly angry, bitter, disillusioned, hopeless people who are too steeped in the culture wars to turn towards working class solidarity, and instead turn towards hate. The delusion that salvation from capitalism can be found in new, more clever capitalism is incredibly seductive and always wrong. We may be forced to integrate this technology into society in the long run.
I don't think we will.
And people like Andrew Yang even believe that it could be a force for eradicating poverty.
Which suggests it's not going to be integrated into society.
And to do this, he wants to set up a DAO to lobby the government, one that gives more voting power to the rich. But VCs have been wrong.
In Andrew's defense, he didn't think about it at all before he proposed it.
In the past, they said that we'd have air taxis by now to take us to the airport. What we actually got was more traffic, but in a tunnel underground.
Oh my, there's a traffic jam. Oh.
Here's an idea. How about trains? AI, gene editing, robotics, blockchain, and 3D printing are all predicted as being the future. And they could be right, or they could be very wrong. But if they're right, it needs to be carefully regulated and seen over by the correct people. Otherwise, we will suffer from unfettered capitalism and rampant inequality in ways that we've never seen before. I have nothing against an automated revolution because this could lead to humans having to work less. And this would mean more time for art, and none of it would be of fucking apes. But in the hands of the people that it's in now, it could lead to an elitist owner class and jobless masses. Currently, 47% of US jobs are threatened by automation, and this could go up to 80%. And with an economy based on digital ownership and smart contracts, the elite could collect royalties on every transaction. The idea of renting digital assets from an owner class is already being thrown around. If left to its own devices, I think that this could lead to some sort of tech neo-feudalism. Or, it's probably nothing. Web3 wants to take politics, as we know, out of many things, but not to be neutral, but to take democratic rights and rules for participation away. When only the code decides, and there is no place for debate and political struggle, how do the disenfranchised get heard? How do the powerless organise and revolt? Politics is about struggles, about people having different interests and fighting for them, and often against their political opponents. Web3 doesn't want to stay out of it. It wants it to stop. Whether it happens or not, the conclusion that I've come to is this. Satoshi Nakamoto created blockchain technology after the financial crash in 2008 and successfully marketed it as giving power back to the people. And people still believe that to this day. But the people behind blockchain technology didn't want to help the protesters of Occupy Wall Street. They wanted to be the people on the balcony with the champagne. But if the bubble pops, OpenSea will be pretty much worthless, so I might buy it and change the code to redirect everyone's NFT JPEG links to Goatsea. Full circle, baby!
That's the best case scenario.
The Coinbase app has got my man in a trance. Now he's trying to say this is the
So yeah, as I was saying, I think that this video from Mooncat is one of the better looks at cryptocurrency on YouTube, and it really gets at a lot of things that most of the other ones ignore. You want to go a little bit more on what we all think about cryptocurrency? Like I mentioned, we did an interview with her, which is linked in the description, and I would also definitely check out Mooncat's back catalog. She has done a variety of incredible videos on a whole bunch of different things, and they are all absolutely worth checking out. Thank you all for joining, for listening in, for watching this video alongside with me. Leave a like if you want. Check out that interview and then check out Mooncat's back catalog. You will not be disappointed.